This guy goes pretty far, but I think he fits the tradition of Father Coughlin and McCarthy, and of course, and maybe to a lesser extent, Pat Buchanan, and of course, O'Reilly. These guys are hard right-wing guys. They look a lot alike. They have that we call the black Irish look to them.
What? That was a host on another network with whom you may be familiar last night or 2 nights ago, going after freshman Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Earlier this week, Vice President Joe Biden also stirred up the crowd at a fundraiser by reportedly suggesting that Mr. Cruz is pulling strings in the Senate, suggesting he's forcing, quote, good Republicans to vote against good bills. Why is it that so many on the left and others appear to view Texas Senator Ted Cruz as such a threat? Joining me now, Alan Colmes, host of The Alan Colmes Show, and Mike Gallagher, who's a syndicated radio host and a Fox News contributor. Now, I mean, I could name 4 other hosts on that network who have gone after Ted Cruz in the past week. And there's nothing particularly newsy about Ted Cruz right now. I mean, he's not in the news more than he has been. But boy, oh boy, there must have been a memo that went out or something on the left, Mike, about this guy needs to be brought down. And brought down fast, because I mean, if you hear the attacks, I mean, for everyone from Bill Maher, who calls him a steely-eyed, he says he has a steely-eyed focus of a serial killer, to the MSNBC host who compares him to a Nazi sympathizer, you know, and to the vice president suggesting, look at him, he's just a freshman senator, why would anybody listen to him? What's going on?
Well, what's going on is he's effective, Megyn. I mean, here in the state of Texas, people are enamored with this guy. They're impressed with him. He kind of rose out of nowhere. He's sort of a Tea Party darling. And I really do believe that these attacks are intensifying because the left is recognizing the effectiveness of a guy like Ted Cruz. He is getting things done. Vice President Biden, as you mentioned, alluded to the fact that Cruz has clout. You know, he has effectiveness, and the left can't figure that out. They don't understand the prospect of a grassroots Tea Party kind of candidate who's working hard for the people and getting the job done. I will maintain and I will allege, and I'll bet you my buddy Alan Colmes will disagree with this, but I think the attacks from the left against conservatives are way more vitriolic and vicious than anything we say about them.
Well, but there's something about Senator Cruz that's really, really touching a nerve. And this is a guy, interestingly, Alan, who he's not a career politician. You know, and he spent most of his life practicing law. He was a Solicitor General, meaning the top appellate lawyer in the state of Texas. He worked for the Department of Justice and got into politics relatively late in life, so comes to it sort of with a fresh slate of, look, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, but boy, they don't like what he stands for.
The they also includes Republicans. Let me point out to you that this negative on Ted Cruz is not just the so-called left. And by the way, I like to reject the notion that because 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 people on the left say something, therefore, quote unquote, the left has marched in unison. That's just not the way it works for me, and I didn't get that memo. However, John McCain called him a wacko bird. Yep. Peter King said he did not attend a dinner that Cruz went to, and said he wouldn't attend because Cruz would not help out in funding for Hurricane Sandy. You've got Republicans who don't like this guy. This is not just the left going after him. And also, Cruz once said, upon being criticized, after he said that we have a list of communists at Harvard, he was compared to Senator Joe McCarthy, and he said he was honored to get such a comparison.
He said he believed that there were more communists at Harvard because he went to Harvard undergrad and Harvard Law School than there were Republicans.
And a list of them, just like McCarthy.
But do you have reason to believe that's not true, Alan?
But he said he was honored to be compared to Joe McCarthy. I mean,
is it not true? Is it not true, Alan?
Is it not true?
Here, let me ask you this, Mike. Let me ask you this, because there's a question now about whether. Let me just jump in. There's a question now about whether this strengthens Mr. Cruz's brand, because you know he comes in and he's really touched a nerve. It's sort of like Sarah Palin. You know, I mean, she touched a nerve too, and then many in the press went after her, and then it sort of backfired because people on the right loved her more. I mean, I was there at the 2008 convention speech.
Megyn, liberals have never quite figured out the process of demonizing a guy like Ted Cruz only makes him stronger. I mean, they've never quite grasped the idea. If they just expressed indifference or ignored people like Ted Cruz, he wouldn't continue to build steam and momentum. They're not bright enough to figure that out.
You're totally ignoring that the right goes after this guy.
It's sort of the center right. I do want to point out it's sort of the establishment Republicans, like from Scarborough to McCain It's
Yes.
he's sort of in the more,
Well,
you know, I don't know.
But why
I
is
don't
it
want
only
to
bad
use the
when the
term
liberals do
mavericky
it?
because that's McCain, but you know, he's in this new thread of the Republican
it's
Party.
only
Go ahead,
the
Alan.
The
liberals
right's
who are
not
doing
going
it.
after Ted Cruz. No, the right's not going after Ted
Yes, they
Cruz.
are.
If you've got to cite Pete King, a moderate Republican from
come
New
on.
York,
He's not
and
moderate.
John McCain, a rhino if there ever was one. I mean,
Did you
that's the
vote for
best you
John
got.
McCain, Mike, when he ran for president? Did you vote for
You better
McCain?
believe it. He was sure better than the
Wait, did you
alternative. But
support
I'll
Okay,
him,
but listen,
McCain?
let me
Now
jump
you're
in. Let me
calling
jump
him
in and ask you
names.
this, Alan. Ask you
Yeah.
this, because when I read, because I've met Ted Cruz in person, and he seems like a normal man.
I bet he is.
He didn't jump out at me as a
sure he's
steely-eyed
normal.
serial killer.
No horns?
Nor as I don't know what that means, Black Irish, that you have dark hair and you're Irish. I mean, why is that host even commenting on such a thing? But the question is, when you gear people up to believe, Ted Cruz, and then he comes and he sits down for an interview,
of all,
and I'll give the viewers a sample of what he said when I asked him about the attacks. Listen to him in his own words respond.
Folks are entitled to throw whatever the rocks they want, whatever insults they want. I can tell you from my end, I have no intention of reciprocating. Whatever insult they level my way, I will not respond in kind. What I'm going to stay focused on is trying to do the job the American people want and expect.
Oh, wait, that's actually not that scary.
First of all, it is
Shocking.
this is the Republicans don't like this guy. This is a guy who called if I could please actually be allowed to speak.
right,
He's
but
called.
stop saying
I'm
that.
sorry to bother you with that, Mike. But he called President Obama the most radical president we ever had. That's absurd. You know, he said that Chuck Hagel, another Republican who was on the payroll of North Korea. You've got Republicans embarrassed by this guy. This is not the left versus Ted Cruz.
Again,
his own party is not
baloney.
comfortable with him.
Baloney. Republicans love this guy. You've cited 2 or 3 people who
As you
have
have.
exceptions with something
As
he
you
said.
have.
But and by the way, as to Chris Matthews and the Black Irish comment, this is a guy who the other night on television literally admitted to having voted for Michael Steele once because he's black, and he thought it was disgraceful that there weren't blacks in the Senate, and we needed to have some. I'm telling you, if a conservative said something about some blacks, if anything, it'd be our last day on the air.
I'll leave you with
Chris
this.
Matthews has got plenty of stuff.
I'll leave you with
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
O'Reilly responded in part last night, calling Mr. Matthews misguided intellectually, and said he needs glasses badly because he compared Pat Buchanan, Ted Cruz, and Bill O'Reilly all together as Black Irish, I guess. Here's O'Reilly.
I don't get that.
The question is, why is Matthews spouting this nonsense? Well, one of the reasons could be ratings. MSNBC in prime time down 20% year to year and falling fast. I think it's a desperate attempt by Matthews to get attention. And now Matthews has got to call me names and other people names. He's got to go on the attack because he's got nothing else.
And out of deference to Bill, we'll give him the last word. Alan,
Just
Mike.
like he always
Very
gives me.
important.
Okay.
That's right. Just like he always gives you, and me too, when I go on that show. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.